Hello, everybody. This is Anna and Brian from a Modern World podcast, and today we have our next guest for XR episode, Jeremy Dalton, who is author, speaker, and advisor in Immersive Tech. Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey, Anna. Hey, Brian. Doing really well, thanks. How are you both?
Doing great. It's actually weather is getting better, so spring is almost here. So,
and it's a rare sunny day in London, right? Which is amazing for end of February.
Yeah. Just not a spoiler alert, there's like for those who are listening, that will be published in April, but so you probably already
This is true.
Yeah, we decided to record much early. But can you give maybe a quick introduction to yourself and your background so our listeners know what you're doing and what's your story?
Absolutely. So originally, I come from a financial background. So I qualified as a chartered accountant many, many years ago in PwC, and I was doing all sorts of things relating to that, auditing, business recovery. I was involved in the wind down of Lehman Brothers here in the UK, and so got involved in a lot of very stimulating projects, but it wasn't really my area of passion. And so I slowly looked for opportunities to move out of the finance space and into the technology space, particularly emerging technologies. And that's where I found my love for XR, established PwC's first dedicated immersive tech team globally. And as you know, the rest is history.
So, can you tell us a bit more about how did your journey into XR, I guess, like what was your first experience with it and what made you decide, okay, I really want to, put more of your, career into this space?
Absolutely. So my first experience with XR, it'd have to be going back a long way now. So I experienced virtual reality in the 90s, and for anyone who has also experienced VR back then, you can sympathize with me that it was a very challenging time, let's say, for the technology. Huge, bulky machines, really expensive, super heavy, uncomfortable, nauseating. It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience, but I had a lot of fun as a kid back then, experiencing it. And maybe some of that magic and the excitement was subliminally in the back of my mind when I was looking to pursue a career in the emerging tech space. But fast forward to 2012, Palmer Luckey releases the Oculus DK1 on Kickstarter, requests $240,000, I think it was. And we, the public, gave him about $2.5 million to bring that prototype to life and into our hands. And I got myself a DK1, was super excited about it, and could feel the potential that this technology had and still has in both the business space as well as the consumer space. So in summary, I got very excited by the potential based on the DK1 back then. And I started campaigning within PwC, and I was talking to all the different business leaders of the various business units saying, we need to have a dedicated XR team. We absolutely need one. This can solve real business problems. And of course, nobody listened to me. So I kept on banging on about that for a good few years, and it took me 5 years. But after 5 years, they probably got fed up with me, and they finally said, all right, Jeremy, you can start PwC's first dedicated XR team. And so that was officially established in 2017. But I had been doing client projects in XR for many years before that to try and build the business case for starting up this team. And since then, we grew the team. We brought developers on board. We brought creatives on board, business professionals in the space, and it's been fantastic. We've done projects all over the world since then. I decided to leave PwC in February 2025, and the reason being I was very excited about the technology, but in order to pursue it in a deeper way and a more dedicated way, it was the right time for me to make that jump. So now I'm working with organizations and individuals and NGOs and startups all over the world to help continue to spread the magic of this wonderful technology.
I think it's just like it would be maybe a right point to mention. We actually met like last year, yeah, just like on the XR hack. So it's just like thumbs up for like organizing this hackathon. Just like so many people and just like so many different ideas. It's amazing to see that like uniting people like the community who are passionate about this tech.
That was a wonderful event. And I must give credit to that to Asher Easton in the Innovate UK Immersive Tech Network, as well as the many other judges, mentors, Sean Rodrigo, who was facilitating, and yourselves who were part of the hackers there. It was such a great time, such a magical atmosphere, and I hope that we get an opportunity to do more of those hackathons anywhere in the world. That was a really big one. That was Europe's biggest XR and AI hackathon to date. So I'm hoping we can replicate that success elsewhere.
And maybe can you walk us through from the most interesting or like the exciting project like connected to immersive tech you worked on? What was the hook?
Okay.
What kind of like industries? What was the...
So I'm going to have to pull from a list of, it's over 100 projects now that I've been involved in with regard to XR. And it's everything from writing reports for companies, running workshops, building software, deploying hardware worldwide, analyzing the performance of XR implementations, making recommendations on next steps. But if I pick a few from the history bank, I would say one of the really fun ones I got involved with was the creation of an immersive cybersecurity attack experience in virtual reality. So the idea was to make you feel like you were part of a company that had just been breached. And all your systems are down, financial systems are down, data has been lost. So it's a really intense situation and you're trying to figure a way out of it. So for those of you who are aware of the terminology, this was a multi-branch narrative 360 video experience where we set up custom network infrastructure. So in other words, it was an interactive experience. You had to make decisions in this VR experience. And one of them was, for example, do you pay the Bitcoin payment on the ransomware attack or not? You've got 10 seconds and it's literally counting down. Yes or no? Yes or no? And you're in VR and you're under massive pressure trying to make this decision. We were trying to replicate the pressure you would be under over the course of many days and weeks in a real cybersecurity attack. And so this multi-branch narrative experience ended up being a really complicated one where you had the initial point that you joined the experience on, and then you could make 3 decisions. And each of those 3 decisions had 2 decisions off the back of them. So the tree diagram became really, really complicated, and we filmed a lot of different scenes. And but what was particularly exciting about this was the real-time data collection. So I was in a room, we were deploying this in Toronto, Canada, and I was in a room with an iPad at the back. And every time someone made a decision, there were 300 people in that room, 300 people wearing 300 headsets, all going through the experience at exactly the same time. And I could see every one of them on my iPad, what decisions they were making and where they were in the tree diagram of decision points. And after they took off their headsets, so the experience was about 15, 20 minutes long. After they took off their headset, I was able to display on screen in front of all 300 the aggregate result of all of their decisions. So I could tell them, well, 90% of you decided not to pay the Bitcoin ransomware payment, but 10% of you did. Why was that? What was going through your mind when you made that decision? And then we had a great discussion afterwards. So that was a particularly exciting experience for me that involved a lot of different aspects of VR. It involved the design of the software and the 360 video production and shooting and post-production, but it also involved the business implementation of this technology as well, and the procurement of 300 headsets specifically for this project, which then had to be set up and it had to be managed via MDM solution. So there was a lot of really interesting aspects to that project that made it quite unique. So that was one example of a project I've been involved in. Another one, which you may have heard, was called In My Shoes. And this was all about tackling unconscious bias in the workplace. And so we involved our multicultural business network to ensure that that experience was as authentic as possible and representative of real world experiences. And we used a different technology for this one. So we used volumetric capture to bring these individuals to life in a very realistic way. And for those of you who haven't experienced volumetric capture, it was really, really exciting and immersive technology. You can do it in many different ways, but we went to a specialist studio in South London where there were 106 cameras all around you in a type of cylindrical shaped room. About half of those cameras were regular video cameras, half of them were depth cameras. So in other words, they tracked the distance between the camera and your body at various points. So if you have a video feed of someone and from all angles, and you have all of those distances, you can create a 3D model of someone that is recorded depending on how they're moving and speaking in the scene. And then you can slap on the texture on top of that. So it looks exactly like the real person. And we then optimized that so it could run on standalone headsets. And we deployed that experience to 25,000 people. In fact, it's more than 25,000 people now because it went worldwide. And we've had offshoots of that project in Australia, in the United States, and elsewhere. So that was a really exciting project too. And then, of course, less exciting but equally important projects. I've done stuff with government entities around the world, helping them understand the value of the technology, worked with the NHS to produce a 200-page report about the value of VR and AR in healthcare, worked with an NGO to help them think about how they can best deploy VR resources around the world and what type of skill sets they would need to be able to stand up a dedicated VR team and do what they wanted to do with it. And then I've been helping the European Media and Immersion Lab deploy, I think it was over $4 million worth of funding towards European XR projects. And that's just a few examples of the type of stuff I've done, but I try to get involved in as much as possible, working with startups, Fortune 500, governments, NGOs all over the world. And now as an independent advisor, I'm very much looking forward to continuing that and traveling the world, spreading the joy and the good word around the technology.
I guess as someone who's worked with, such a large range of clients in this particular space, like what's, I guess in your opinion, what's the, the main holdback for some of these companies adopting XR? Like when they first approach you, what are they worried about? Like what are they thinking of? And I guess where do they see the potential? I don't know if you see any common patterns across all these different clients.
So I can tell you that most clients don't realize both the value and the challenges of implementing XR technology. And I created a framework to help understand what these challenges are. And, it's less of a framework, more of a mnemonic to help remember it. It's called CECE, so CECE. And that stands for content, education, cost, and experience. And the idea there to go through all of those, cost is fairly self-explanatory, right? Education doesn't refer to the level of education in society. It refers to the level of understanding of the technology. And true understanding comes from actually experiencing the technology itself. The big problem with that most people don't realize is that with other technologies, yes, slide decks will suffice. You can explain the outcome. You can perhaps show the project on a slide deck through all the process diagrams and the outcomes. But one of the unique aspects of this technology that we deal with is the fact that it's so experiential, so visceral. And because of that, it means there is a lot of excitement around the tech, but there is a lot of requirement to try out the technology and experience it firsthand to truly understand it. So cost education, content is the third one, and this refers to the availability of high quality and relevant content, particular to your industry and to your business problem. And this is another area that sometimes is difficult, getting better these days, but it's quite difficult to find off-the-shelf content that is particular to your industry, to your geography, to your business. I know that I spent a lot of time working with clients, showing them stuff that we had built before, but they wanted changes made to it. So, for example, real example, the cybersecurity attack experience that I spoke to you about. There was one client that really liked it, but everybody in that experience had a British accent. So it was pretty clear that you were in the middle of a cybersecurity attack on a British company. And so American clients were like, this is just not going to fly for us. So we have to think about dubbing solutions and all sorts of other stuff like that, because obviously you can't reshoot that. It's kind of like a film production. You can't reshoot 360 video very easily. There's incredible cost involved in that. So content is certainly a challenge unless you have the investment and you're willing to put it into creating a bespoke experience, or if you are able to find off-the-shelf software, which is becoming more and more prevalent now. The final area is the real area of interest, and this is the true barrier to XR adoption in mainstream society. And this is experience. And by experience, I mean the user experience of the technology. In other words, how easy and intuitive is it to pick up, just put on, be comfortable, and do what you need to do very quickly? And we still have more work to do in making that a near perfect experience. And I was giving a presentation specifically on this subject. There are lots of user experience areas that need to be resolved. So things like the weight of the headset, the fit of the headset, the heat distribution, the moisture wicking face mask material, the cushioning of the face mask, the visual fidelity of the optical system, the fashionability of the design, hygiene concerns, social awkwardness, interoperability, durability, sound quality, restrictive wiring, latency. So the list keeps on going on and on. And I say this not to put people off the technology, but to be realistic about the momentous and mountainous challenge that we have ahead of us that needs to be resolved in order to get this technology into the mainstream. It is already good enough for lots of businesses, and with all the people I've worked with over the last 12 years, there are so many businesses across every single industry that find this technology indispensable. So there's no doubt about the value of it. The big question is, on the other side of the equation, the cost of the technology. And I don't mean just the financial cost, but the time cost, the friction associated with implementing this solution. It's more work needs to be done to convince more people to take on the technology. But the good news is all of these points that I mentioned and many more challenges, they are all being worked on right now. And in fact, if you look over the last just 2 to 3 years, incredible strides have been made in all those areas. And if you look back 10 years to when we were first starting to see consumer versions of headsets release in the market in this current era of virtual reality, there has been a transformational change in the industry with regard to those challenges. So in my mind, there is absolutely no doubt about the positive future of this technology, and that things will get easier and easier, and therefore it will be better implemented in society, in both the business world and our personal lives as well.
And
so a long way to answer your question, but hopefully it answers it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I think just like I wanted to ask, maybe do you have any additional advice? So, for example, I think last year? Yeah, I think last year I went to XR event and I met like a person who is actually advising NHS as well, like on some of XR Tech. But he said that although they have some headsets, just dusting somewhere over there. They're not really using it. So is it just because people are scared to break them, or they don't really have a good use case? So because you have experience of forming like an XR team in PwC, and just like, do you have any advice if you're, for example, you are the person who sees there's just like, oh yeah, there is a potential. What can I do to actually implement it in my company? So
yes,
any kind of like steps.
So one piece of advice: please don't create an innovation lab for the sake of innovation. Focus on a real business problem that you'd like to solve. And you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to go after 10 big problems. Just take one problem that you think virtual reality or augmented reality is well suited for, and build a business case to try and tackle that problem. Look for research in the academic realm. So I've been involved in the supervision of PhD level research with regard to virtual reality implementation in business. There is a lot of research out there from academia that will help you build that business case on the value of the technology to solve particular business problems. And if you can't find it in academia, then look in the corporate space. So I've authored or helped with multiple studies around virtual reality in soft skills training, virtual reality for remote collaboration. There are so many, and virtual reality in terms of a number of use cases, studying the economic impact of it. So there are so many places that virtual reality and AR can help solve, but you have to be deliberate about it. So that's my one piece of advice. The second piece of advice would be to start small. Run a pilot program. Don't ask for millions and tens of billions of dollars of funding to build something big out. Just consider something quite small. Consider a local team, a proof of concept, a minimum viable product, and get some data from implementing that experience. Once you've done that, you can then use that really powerful data showing the value of the technology you've just implemented in your business to get further funding and to build it out further with a much greater chance of success.
I guess, like, based on what you've seen so far and all the different projects you work with, like, what is the, like, one area you think, immersive technology can really make a big impact, but you're not seeing enough of and you'd like to see a bit more of in the future? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of those studies that I mentioned came out of some work that we did. So it was a colleague of mine, Philip Sossman, and I were working with the University of Münster in Germany. And they have a fantastic team there led by Professor Thorsten. And we're working with one of our clients, so the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Lower Saxony in Germany, and in particular an individual, Andre Henke, who's a great leader over there. He embraced virtual reality, brought it in to try and bring his workforce together in a more effective, impactful way. And so we wanted to help answer the question, is virtual reality worth implementing when you have a remote workforce? And if so, what are the benefits? So we worked with the University of Münster on this and produced an academic study, which is publicly available. This is one of the studies I talked about. You can access it. No registration gates, no pay gates, nothing. And we found some really interesting results. So we found that virtual reality could give you an increase in 58% in terms of your sense of closeness with colleagues versus video conferencing. So for stuff where you're trying to workshop and there's deep thinking involved and there's a lot of deep collaboration, virtual reality is a fantastic solution where the evidence is mounting on its value for bringing workforces together and helping them work together. So, but I don't see a lot of that in the business world across different industries. So I think that is an untapped area with some real academic evidence behind it. And a small plug for my book, actually, Reality Check, which the second edition of is releasing in summer 2025. You'll be able to read a summary of that case study with data that is not even publicly available right now. So definitely check that out, have a look at the data, see if it helps support your use case. And hopefully we'll see over the next few years an increase or a growth in the use of virtual reality for remote collaboration to bring remote workforces together around the world.
And do you have any hopes and predictions for the future of immersive tech and your own journey in the next couple of years? So
in the 1920s, an American political campaign went out professing that this particular party had produced a chicken in every pot, a car in every garage. That was their vision that they were trying to sell. And so my vision along those lines is a headset in every home, and perhaps even a headset on every desk in the workplace. I would love to see a future, and I don't think it's unrealistic to imagine a time in just a few years from now where we have, as a new joiner to a company, we're given a laptop, a mobile phone, and a headset. And a lot of people think that that's not going to happen because headsets will take over from laptops and mobile phones. And I don't personally think that. I think each of these devices has its own unique pros and cons to be used in different situations. You can't use a laptop for everything. You can't use a mobile phone for everything in all circumstances. And a headset definitely provides you with lots of different advantages in terms of immersion, in terms of increased effectiveness of training, for example, and lots of other stuff. So yes, I think in the future we will see a headset in every home and on every desk in the workplace. In terms of my personal hopes for the future, I would love to be in a completely different geography, maybe a year or two from now. So I've done work in the UK. That was where most of my XR projects came out of, although I've been doing work with clients in different parts of the world, but based primarily in the UK. I've done 2 years in the United States where I helped PwC US build out their immersive strategy. And now I'm looking at the Middle East and East Asia. And I think there's a lot of potential in those regions for the value of the technology. So don't be surprised if you see me over there in a year or two. And hopefully we'll be helping spread the good word of XR in those regions too.
Nice. Yeah. It's kind of like, I feel like we went from the age of, fully working in the office into working remotely, and now we're trying to get back into the office. But maybe in the future, there's going to be an option for a virtual office where essentially working in the metaverse. Who knows? But yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about it, actually, that's probably another answer to your question. When we talk about immersive tech, we're not just necessarily talking about headsets. And when the metaverse era came round, there was a lot of excitement about virtual worlds. So maybe another view on the future is a hope that we see these virtual worlds being implemented in society in a meaningful, valuable way that shows some real business outcomes. So I'm very bullish on that for the future. I've seen the value of virtual worlds in recruitment, for example. That was one project that my team stood up in PwC when the pandemic happened to help continue recruitment efforts in a very strong way and reach as many people as possible. We used virtual world solutions, and we had tens of thousands of people engage with us through those virtual worlds. And the feedback that I received personally was just fantastic. People felt super comfortable. They loved being able to explore the different areas, make their own journey. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of that in the future too.
Nice. I think that's probably a good place to start wrapping up. So I'd like to leave maybe the last minute or so for yourself. Any last words for our listeners or watchers? And how can they get in touch? If they have any more questions or want to find out more about what you're getting up to.
Well, I hope everyone is as excited about immersive technologies as we are here. And if you want to chat more about any of this stuff, I'm always open to a conversation. And you can reach me through my website, so jdxr.io, and that should take you to all my social media handles. I'm mainly on LinkedIn if you want to connect there. And you can reach out to me through the contact form on the website too.
Amazing. We'll be sure to include down there like all the links in the description so you can just click and connect quickly. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I wish we had more time, but yeah, just like maybe we can save it to like episode 2 in the future.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure, Anne and Brian. Thanks so much, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure for us having you, and thank you to all everyone who's tuned in so far. So yeah, have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.